Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. We are here to talk about the future of compliance with AI and its impact on learning and the creation of learning in compliance. There are many wonderful things happening in the space of AI, and of course, this is just one area where we can start to use the tools to impact many things on behalf of our learners and our organizations. First of all, just to look at the challenges that everybody's facing in compliance. The perceptions of compliance are pretty bad. It's just seen culturally as a tick box. It is boring with a capital B. It doesn't necessarily change behavior, and it kind of erodes the learning and development brand. It is not uncommon for whoever is briefing me to sort of roll their eyes and sigh at the very mention of mandatory and compliance learning, which of course sort of runs counter to my entire perception of what compliance is. I love compliance. The secret is out. Put it out there on LinkedIn. It is a space where there is a huge opportunity, and the content that we can create in this space really does redefine people's expectations, but aligned to those common perceptions currently of L&D. I wonder how many of you have seen this meme or how familiar this meme feels.
Slow, let me take the wheel.
It's too fast. How could you even tell what's on?
I can tell.
I mean, the fact that this was doing the rounds all over Instagram, LinkedIn, just shows some of the challenges that we face in that compliance space, and what most of the world is thinking about the content that's created and the approaches that people take. So that learner experience currently is around sort of using of fear as a motivator for people. And we know fear is not the best motivator. It has a very short-term impact, and there's much better ways to connect with people. Content repeats every single year, so you feel like you're being banged over the head repeatedly with the same content. People are doing it all at the last minute. Culturally, that's not ideal, and people are sharing answers. Heaven forbid, even line managers are sharing answers, so people are away from their desk for as short a time as possible. And ultimately, scenarios that are created are not necessarily related to real work. And I think a lot of that comes from the need for lots of learning organizations to use off-the-shelf content, what feels like generic materials that work very well there, but ultimately it does not connect to the learner. So there is no connection to real work. And ultimately, that's part of that lack of driving behaviors because nobody understands it within their context. And so that ultimately that experience feels like compliance is not really helping me, the learner, as an individual. So we've got to look at taking on all of these challenges in the best possible way. And we know that learning teams are now under more pressure than ever to engage their people. And so I see annual compliance, annual mandatory training as a real moment to engage people with a clear sense of purpose. We can drive positive engagement with the business. We can celebrate the work that people do and the way that stacks up to the corporate purpose and what people are trying to achieve, the role that people play in society, the individual steps we can take to fight bad actors, and ultimately contribute to a better society all round. We can increase personalization, and we'll look at the ways that we can do that through scaled use of AI a bit later on. And also really thinking next step is how we can start to enable the assessment of soft skills through the mandatory training. I mean, people are always trying to do a decent skills assessment. And what better way than with the mandatory training, the annual training, everybody has to complete, and finding a way to do that assessment of skills to identify what is there in the business, what needs to be improved. And this is one place where absolutely there is a golden opportunity to become an advisor to risk compliance teams and support business growth. The stories that we tell really do motivate people, build understanding and engagement. And so if your story about mandatory and compliance is, you just want people off the shop floor for as short a time as possible, you want them to effectively cheat and get through it, that sets a bad precedent for risk and compliance culture. And so the stories that we tell around that risk culture are absolutely integral. Talking about fighting terrorists, stopping drug dealers, these things really do inspire and motivate. And it's content that people want to engage with. I recently came across this example of content around data privacy. It's got over 100,000 likes. This is content that the world does find fascinating. And as we say, it's that sticky story that people want to share and engage with.
To use it, you just put the glasses on. Then as you walk by people, the glasses will detect when somebody's face is in frame. This photo is used to analyze them, and after a few seconds, their personal information pops up on your phone.
Cambridge Community Foundation. Oh, hi, ma'am. Wait, are you Betsy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I met you through like the Cambridge Community Foundation, right? Yeah. It's great to meet you. I'm Kane.
So here's how it works. We stream the video from the glasses straight to Instagram and have a computer program monitor the stream. We use AI to detect when we're looking at someone's face. Then we scour the internet to find more pictures of that person. Finally, we use data sources like online articles and voter registration databases to figure out their name, phone number, home address, and relatives' names. And it's all fed back to an app we wrote on our phone. Is your address 4 Valley?
Yeah.
And so they go on to continue showing how they can very rapidly rip all this information, completely dox somebody. And that kind of viewing really motivates people to step up and understand those risks and the things that they need to do in each situation to make sure bad actors do not win. And we know this sort of storytelling is really impactful. We're 12 times more likely to remember stories than stats alone. We have to think about telling stories that move people through content rather than, again, hitting them with those walls of text. And there are great ways that you can start to shape and structure stories with the existing content that you may already have using some AI tools as well. And when we look at stories that really connect to that individual sense of purpose, potentially loss of all your family photos on your phone if somebody gets access to it, those things can motivate people to change. That sense of purpose connects to me as an individual, also the role that I play in the organization. And once you've motivated that sense of purpose and got people to understand what it is we're really looking for them to do in their context, you can build that sense of belief around the roles that they play and start to drive change. I want to just show a key piece where rather than using fear to motivate, we celebrated the role individuals play. And if you're in financial services, this is a key one around raising suspicious activity reports. And so demonstrating what happens once those reports are raised, following it through to its end conclusion, we can see what that simple action of raising a report can actually do to keep people safe. So those kind of films that you might have seen there, that we are entering a stage where there's ability to scale using AI to create that kind of content rapidly. If you've got the right story, the right structure, the right prompts, those are the kind of things that you can create, which means, very quickly we can start to scale that kind of impactful storytelling, understanding each of the different job roles, where they sit, what those variations might be, and generating variations of content that does celebrate purpose and is very specific to role. I guess just to talk about another area, perhaps where AI can't yet tread, is when it gets really authentic, right? We know authentic stories drive interest and shape culture. And we're seeing a big trend for organizations to, rather than rely on case studies of other people when they've got it wrong, to really start to look back at the historic issues that they may have faced and tell very authentic stories to make sure that everybody understands the risks and the culture and the developments around risk and compliance within that organization. So being able to lean into very authentic, real stories adds a lot of credibility and value, particularly around engagement. And so working with a global bank, we also looked at these issues of conduct and the stories that can be told around those. And the power in these authentic stories, I think, is evident when you watch. So let's have a look at this.
I felt anxious. In fact, actually, I'd like to use the word terrified. I thought that I could be perceived as a troublemaker.
I felt guilty. I felt I'd done something wrong. You think the worst.
I thought to myself, what is going on? What have I done?
I was really shocked, and immediately I feel very ashamed.
I did think, wow, this could be the end of my career.
So where challenges have been faced and overcome, and those personal narratives that are brought to life, sets us up, because we know successful stories acknowledge challenges, and by facing into those and the very real risks people have encountered, if our intention is not just to make compliance learning better, but to truly build a risk culture, it's an incredible way to start doing that. So onto the topic of adaptive learning, which I see as an end to the sheep dip approach, that sense of taking everybody, no matter who they are, where they are, and dunking them through the same learning content, hoping for a positive outcome. We are into a new world when it comes to AI. Adaptive learning is a dynamic approach that tailors content to an individual's learning needs. So you may have done it on multiple different programs before, in onboarding, for example, making sure that anybody who is new to your organization, you can take them through an assessment that will see, have they ticked all the boxes that we need them to have, and therefore do they have to go through all this required learning for that role. And ultimately, adaptive learning is all in the logic. This is stuff that you can do using all the basic rapid authoring tools that are available to you, providing a test out of content for anybody that achieves a pass grade. So simply taking that logic of saying, yep, culturally, we're going to show you a film so that we understand everybody is brought up to speed with the requirements of this particular issue, this particular compliance issue. But once everybody has seen the film, we're also going to give them the opportunity to test out and prove their knowledge so they don't have to go through the rest of the learning. And so applying that logic can be done very simply and effectively with the tools that are already at many people's disposal. So from that sort of foundation of the right kind of learning logic, the rigor behind the learning experience design, the deep understanding of the SMR content, how do we take that and take it to the next level? And as sort of learning comms professionals, this is where we start to move into this world of Gen AI powered program creation. And this is the dawn of the L&D nirvana, and AI has come to the rescue to really look at taking all that logic, as we say, and building it out. And if anybody's not familiar with the latest reports on AI from Don Taylor and Egler, there's a fascinating read on all the ways that learning professionals are starting to use AI. And as I've started to coin it, it's the 6D in the 5DI process, which is delegate. So at each stage of that 5DI process, what tasks can we delegate to AI in order to improve the way that we're designing content and ultimately create a better learning experience design? And so just to talk that through currently, right, looking at that sense of logic, all the things we already have at our disposal, use of SME bots or sort of combined LXD and SME mind is the best application currently for the technology in the compliance space. So ultimately, sort of curated, fully curated, manicured, reviewed. There's always going to be human review. We're not taking that out of the loop. Humans are always going to stay in the loop of this process. To take that multi-use content and apply the learning logic, a couple of key benefits are that logic and that content and the thinking that the AI generated SME bots create is not going anywhere. It's laying a foundation of logic and content that can be used this year and beyond. As your risk in your organization comes down around AI, as you select the tools that are going to be used forever, those things are going to be available. That information, that knowledge is going to be available to you and to the wider business throughout. But just look at the knowledge inputs. We can strip existing learning. We can take content from your SMEs, their latest policies, procedures, processes. We can do the audience and outcomes, deeper workshop outputs from review of that sort of the content structures with your SMEs. Or you don't even need to look internally. If there's any sort of queries about risk, about using all your internal policies, the external view, the regulator's landscape is fully published and open sourced. So in this space, you can rapidly accelerate to build the required level of content. Then ultimately you go into the bot design. And so this might sound technical, but one of the greatest things about AI for everybody is that this is natural language. Natural language is your only barrier to entry for creating a bot. And very soon it'll be your only barrier to entry for creating many things. But within that process, if you're taking all that content, you're taking the perfect learning experience design that you want to create, this is a way of rapidly accelerating it. So the SME bots, all that content is there, but it's supported by your scenario generator. So you can build out a generator that takes that information, is also aligned to a persona mapper. So working back through all your learner data, really analyzing what everybody needs to know. Those things can be built out as bots that all communicate to each other to create the right kind of outputs. So that's scenario scripts, comms and videos, adaptive learning, point of need resources. So we say this is multi-use content. The power here is really taking the experience to the next level. So if you're going to start doing this, consider what we really need to assess as you go through that process to prove compliance. If we take all the logic from the past, we're just going to be assessing pass rates, completion rates, because that's what the business wants to show. So everybody is approved to work in the business because they've done the training, right? If that's what we want to assess, then we're not going to be moving the dial. Ultimately, it's around assessing the applied knowledge in the moment. Ultimately, that is what learning is. It's actually doing the do. It's not the knowledge retained. And so there's this huge opportunity to take all that technology, take the thinking and approaches and build it out into something far more engaging. In a world of learning, gamification potentially has been and gone. The sort of gamification of compliance training, we've seen go very wrong. Taking the idea of gamification, we're not talking wizards and coins and badges. We're talking about gamifying people's reality and building that context up to be able to create an assessment of their applied knowledge. And as we're doing that, we can also add in some additional measures throughout, right? Which means we can start to assess whether people are confident that they know the right thing and what their actual competence is. And so that'll give us a measure of risk of where people think they know everything, but they don't. So analyzing that confidence versus competence. Risk identification. Do they know the risks? And do they know how to mitigate against those risks appropriately for your organization? These things give real value to the business to understand the risk landscape and turns you into more of a strategic advisor when you can go back with your data that proves these are risk areas, this is what people don't know, these are the main challenges for us. Knowledge, again, I still think it's important. There's obviously ways if people don't understand what fraud is or how it manifests, there's still a sense that actually that applied knowledge and a deeper knowledge can be assessed throughout those scenarios as well. But ultimately, we can start to look at the skills throughout those scenarios. Do people have the right level of communication? Are they curious enough to find out more things? So just thinking about how that happens and how we start to leapfrog that rapid content creation phase, I think it is actually about those last two words in this statement. I think as professionals in the space, we have to expect more of the experience we create. With the AI opportunity is the real opportunity to shape our own expectations of what is possible. So we talked a bit about some of those skills, critical thinking, absolutely front and center, maybe communication. We can add in like send an email to the customer. Which email do you want to send? And make sure they've got the right tone of voice. And not too many steps away, we will be able to have AI at the heart of learning solutions that basically allows you to write a free text email, right? That says, write an email back to Jack that says, Jack, thanks for your call. I've got all these concerns about X, Y, and Z. We need to do further due diligence. and you click send and that goes off, and the AI can come back with Jack's response. It can also analyze your ability to write a coherent email. Those steps are very close. And if we're looking at regenerating new waves of compliance content this year, this is the year to lay the foundation. I'm not going to recommend tools here because the tools are constantly evolving, but the thinking, I'm hoping that what we're really setting up here is that idea that actually the logic, your learning experience design logic, is what you can start to capture now against the SME content, but ultimately that desire and need to create a better learning experience, that can happen today, and you can start to build up and lay those foundations so that next year, over time, you can start to map and annually assess those skills that are required for your business. Just finally, because obviously people are still tracking attendance as a critical piece, tracking completion rates, that's 78% completion rates. I wanted to take on this challenge. Lots of people have issue with integration and the ability to capture the right level of data around their organization. That you can do this, like data can be captured. It is not the major challenge that it has once been, right? As long as you're willing to put some time in up front and maybe spend a bit of time with the right supplier to map out those processes and work with your internal security teams. If you've got the right provider with the right level of ISO certification, it's not impossible to do at all. You can be providing SCORM compliant data out to the learning management system, whilst also through APIs taking data that actually is meaningful to you and to the organization and turns you into that strategic advisor. And I think we're sort of beyond that stage of it feeling difficult. It's time to do it and to start using that data to then inform future iterations of the content that you create.